Hi, this is Hall of Famer Eric Dickerson.
What's up, everybody? I'm Matt Leinart, 2004 Heisman Trophy winner.
Hey, I'm Zane Gonzalez.
Hi, I'm Matt Barry from ESPN. You're getting ready to watch one of the best college football podcasts ever. It's the Harris Highlight Show.
You're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
And you're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
And you're listening to the Harris Highlight Show. Enjoy it.
Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na.
Coming to you live from the Chateau with a completely beautiful voice this week is the Harris Highlight Show. Joining me this week is our Ontario Reign in 77 broadcaster, Josh Schaefer.
Whose house?
Our college football expert
Chateau,
and analyst / potential future Ohio broadcaster. It's not official yet, I don't think, so we'll keep it on that. Lyle Goldstein with executive producer and IndyCar social media producer, experts, coordinator. I don't know what the official title is. Yes. Video producer and everything else, Brady Klain. Gentlemen, how are we doing this week?
Well, naturally, I'm doing pretty good since the Rams won the Super Bowl. So the answer to the question, whose house is Rams' house? What we did just learn is that I don't really think Blake knows what you two do. So...
Well, I don't know what their official title is.
And then the thing is, we really don't know what Blake does either.
No one does either.
And guess what? Point. We don't really care.
None of us actually know what anyone does. We just...
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
It just gets the people going.
Gets the people going.
Gets the people going. Now, for winning a large sum of money off of Bengals plus 4.5, this has to be the most upset I've been over a win, because I wanted to see the Bengals win badly. I know America wanted to see them win badly, but hey, Bengals plus 4.5. America, you're a winner.
No, the Rams are actually winners.
I would like to say two things about this game. However you were feeling, Josh, of course, the end result was exactly what you wanted. However you were feeling, first off, in the middle of that game where the Rams just continued to try to run the ball down the Bengals' throat and it just kept not working over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Just know for like 55 minutes, you walked a mile in my shoes. Just for like about 55 minutes. And number two, I am very disappointed that Roger Goodell didn't give his best impersonation of intoxicated Rob Manfred when giving Cooper Kupp the trophy, the MVP, where he's like, Cooper, you thrilled all our fans through the entire postseason. You know, like when Rob Manfred gave Corey Seager his MVP and he sounded like he was a few deep. Yeah, man, that was a missed opportunity, but hey, it happens.
Yeah, I will say
big props to the Detroit Rams for winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, big one for the Detroit Rams. Honestly, you know, one of my buddies at the office is a big Lions guy, and he was thrilled. I will say this on that final drive, I may have been sitting forward like this, watching that final drive for the Bengals, and my hands may have been shaking a little bit But I was very confident in the Rams defense. Like, honestly, like I was nervous just because naturally that's where you are at that state of the game. But I was very confident considering that it was the defense who ultimately like shut teams down on now 3 games in a row. They shut down teams on the final drive to win whatever game they were in. So I was feeling pretty good and feeling better now.
Has there ever been a more right, but also a more wrong take than us giving the Bengals crap for not going offensive line with the number 5 overall pick? We were wrong saying they should have picked Jamar Chase, but we were also still very right. Is this like the first ever take where you're just insanely wrong and insanely right at the same time?
I think so. Like, here, let me put it like this. I don't think this season the Bengals get as far if they take Penei Sewell over Jamar Chase, but it's very, very obvious that basically every draft pick and every free agent signing that they use up this offseason should go on their offensive line.
Yes. Every single one. So, hey, if you would have told Detroit fans a year ago
and
that
cornerback because Eli Apple.
That
oh
also
my God, he was just getting worked by the entire league on Twitter. You think it was a couple teammates?
He deserves it.
Did you see? I don't even remember what play it was, but it was a play where Kupp got hit. And it was on Twitter today of like Stafford sprinting down the field and be like, "You hit him? Did you hit him?" And he like yells at like everybody in the secondary, including Apple, like, "That's my teammate. You don't touch him." I was like, okay. But
he's doing that while Joe Burrow's going around telling every player on defense, "Hi, I'm Joe."
Yeah.
That was the best video from the whole game.
Yeah.
Hey,
that and Van Jefferson after post game.
Oh, that's great. So, hey, if you would have told Detroit fans a year ago that Matthew Stafford would be in the Super Bowl and you'd have the number 32 overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft, I think Lions fans would have taken that. But under different circumstances. So, guys, today is finally, we've been talking about this since December or so. It's finally our transfer show. We're going to be doing our best to talk about every possible transfer we can. There have been a lot, one including today, that we'll be giving our thoughts on. And with so many transfers, we're likely going to miss a couple. So if there's a player that you'd like to hear our thoughts on that entered the transfer portal and is either still hanging out there or ended up at a brand new school, you guys can donate to the super chat. Let us know which player you'd like to hear our thoughts on. Or again, if you have any college football related questions whatsoever about the offseason, this upcoming season, let us know in the super chat, because again, we're going to be talking about the most notable transfers so far from the offseason, but we're still probably going to miss a bunch because the transfer portal has never been this active. I mean, it's essentially a conference in its own. The players that were in the transfer portal at one point, I don't know what the percentage of just FBS players that entered, but it seems like it's got to be at least like 1 in 10 or at least something like that, because there have been so many players that have transferred, good and bad, for various reasons. So again, if there's any player or team necessarily that you want to hear our thoughts on, you guys can donate to the super chat. We'll talk about it. We'll answer your guys' question. But guys, before we dive deep into certain teams, certain players that have been involved in the transfer portal, I wanted to start off with the topic about whether or not you guys think the transfer portal is good or bad for college football. Transferring is nothing new. We've seen it the past few decades. Players ultimately transfer schools, but for the most part, they were always usually grad transfers where they graduate and they want to go finish off their playing career at one more school for one more year. Now it's essentially anyone can transfer. Even again, if you're an All-American, nobody's safe. Anyone can enter the transfer portal. So I just want to know what your guys' thoughts are on this new era of college football where essentially nobody's safe and teams are pretty much switching things up with the transfer portal, and it's kind of like a new way of recruiting almost.
I think it's a good thing personally, but I understand why people can get frustrated by it because it seems like it's essentially just free agency at this point. I do understand that. At the same time, if you were to think about football players in any other sense of life, you would not have a problem with them going somewhere else if they want to do something else, right? Like if one of us got a cool job and wanted to go do a new job, no one would care. They'd think that was cool. If one of us in school wanted to transfer schools, is there a problem with that? No. But it's because they play football that seems like it's a completely different topic. And it's the same thing with all of these new sponsorship and contract deals. Lyle brought this up on a show. We had people want to sponsor the Harris Highlight Show. If we were athletes, we would have been going against NCAA regulations. Like, how does that make sense? Just because we're not athletes, there's a completely different thing, story behind it. So I think that these guys should be able to do anything they want to do. I think they should go anywhere that they want to go. I do think that along with the same things as all these sponsorship deals and the NILs and things like that, I think they could be probably regulated a little bit more, a little bit better. But ultimately, the idea of it is brilliant. These guys should be able to do whatever they want to better themselves for their future. And that's what this comes down to. The loyalty and this and that. Who cares? Like, if these guys want to go somewhere else, they want to go somewhere else. There is a transfer today that I will say I could understand people talking about the loyalty. If you say, I want to be here and a week later you're out. Like, things change. I get all that. But at the same time, these guys got to do what they got to do to better themselves in the future. And that's the way that I view it.
I think my stance is just about on that same line as where yours is, that there can be negative connotations to it, but for the most part, especially because these guys are unpaid amateur athletes, you have to let them make whatever decision they feel is best for them. And like you said, maybe there could be some regulations, and I understand why some people would view this as a bad thing, that, like Josh was talking about, it just becomes free agency. And in a lot of ways, it almost feels similar to how the NBA works. Like, we're in the NBA, if you're unhappy with your team, it doesn't matter that you have 3 or 4 years left on your deal. You can just make some public statement saying, I'm unhappy, I want off this team, here's where I want to be traded, and here's when I want to be traded by. And people view it as just normal, and then it goes through and it happens. And maybe that's what people are kind of feeling like is going to happen with the transfer portal, and already has happened with the transfer portal, that after 1 year, you're not playing and you're a little low on the depth chart, and you decide, well, I'm just going to, quote unquote, in their eyes, give up and go somewhere else. Where in reality, especially because these guys are underpaid, not even underpaid, they're not paid. You have to let them make their own decision for them. And honestly, it kind of opens up a new strategy and a new tactic to college football. And is anybody going to get up there with the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world? It'd be tough, but in some ways, this could give some teams a little bit of an advantage if they can figure out how to crush the transfer portal recruiting. So, yeah, I think in a lot of ways it makes the sport more exciting. It gives players more leverage and more opportunity, and it gives them the chance to make the best decisions for themselves without having to sit out a full year as consequence, too.
The landscape that we know of college football over the last few years, and look at the NFL, would not be what it is without the transfer portal. This past weekend, would Joe Burrow have him playing in the Super Bowl had he stayed at Ohio State? Would Kyler Murray be Kyler Murray if he hadn't transferred to Oklahoma?
Same thing with
Baker Mayfield. You could even throw Jalen Hurts in that mix as well. And that's just looking at some of the quarterbacks over the last, 3 years? Baker from, 2015? 16,
Something
17?
like that, I think, yeah.
17? I think it was 17. I see no problem with it.
Yeah.
Players want out. Players realize Cam Newton. Players realize this is not, this is not the best decision I made. I realized I was 17 years old making this decision that was going to impact my future. And I realize now, say at 20 years old, 2 years later, there is a better opportunity for me to go somewhere else. Let it be. Sure. Josh said it perfectly. Any of us right now changed jobs, transferred schools in college. No, none of us bat an eye. Hey, good for you. Do what you got to do. Why is it not the same for these guys? Do what you got to do. Good for you. I think it's great for college football because it's great for the players. Yeah, things happen like what we saw some of the stuff at ASU today. We'll get into that here in a bit, but let it be.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just quarterbacks. You can make the case out of so many players where they transferred and essentially it helped their draft stock, got more playing time. I think it's kind of fun. I think this is essentially, again, like free agency. And this is much, I mean, it's kind of different. I think NBA, out of all the major sports, probably has the best free agency because it's usually like July 1st. And then like the first like 24 hours, there's just like a flurry of moves. Other free agencies like in the NFL, MLB, no one cares about NHL. I don't know how it is in that soccer league that Josh follows. It's a pretty big soccer league out there. I don't know how
league.
I don't know how that works, but I mean, this has been pretty fun because it seems like almost every day we're essentially getting, some sort of big name that's entering the transfer portal. And it's kind of fun because it's like in different stages. You get the first stage of, oh my goodness, Spencer Rattler's in the transfer portal. Then you get the second stage of, all right, now it's time to speculate. Where's he going to go? What opportunities make the most sense? And then you get the third stage of, all right, this is where he's going. This is what's going to happen. So overall, it used to be, again, like I mentioned, it was kind of like it was a bunch of grad transfers. Now it seems like essentially anyone's going to transfer, which certain circumstances I understand. Like if you've been there for a couple of years, you're not getting enough playing time. Now it seems like if you're not starting all 12 games, players just want to get up and transfer. There are some situations where I think players aren't necessarily being as loyal as they should be. But then again, with how coaches are, I don't think players need to really be loyal at all. But I like it. I think it's fun. I think it's going to really change the landscape of college football because I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it's essentially turned into like recruiting. I mean, I was joking with BK that Indiana was ranked in the top 10 of transfer rankings a few weeks ago. I don't think they no longer are, but now you have like the top 10 transfer rankings and it's a big deal. It's just like in recruiting, you want to have a top 10 recruiting class. Nowadays, if you have a top 10 transfer class, I mean, just Alabama's class, off the top of my head, some of the guys they've landed, it's remarkable. And I think moving forward, I think teams are going to take full advantage of it, unless you're Dabo Swinney, who just still, I think, denounces it entirely. But coaches know that they can use this to their advantage, where it's another level of recruiting. And if you're able to win the transfer portal every offseason, I think it's going to completely change the landscape of college football. And I just want to see at one point a bunch of these transfers decide one year, let's just form a super team and let's just go somewhere. I think that would be really exciting. Just like some random team. They just land some of the top transfer guys. So overall, I think it's good for college football. I think it adds some more excitement. I do think it actually adds some more balance because, again, you're going to be having teams like Alabama, Ohio State, where all these 5 and 4 stars that couldn't necessarily play behind all the other 4 and 5 stars, they might be going to other programs early on in their careers and they might be sticking there. So I think it's going to bring some sort of balance, not a whole lot, but I think it's going to bring some slight balance. And again, I've enjoyed it this offseason with all the transfer news we've gotten. I don't know if this is going to be, like a one-time thing where this might be the craziest offseason we get in a while, or if moving forward, if the college football offseason is going to be like this, because unless you're like really, really deep into college football recruiting, personally, I'm not. I don't know if you three, how deep you guys are into recruiting. I'm never really, that big, deep into it where I'm following it. But in regards to the transfer portal, I follow this like on a day-to-day basis to see who's in, who's out, who's going places, and it's a lot of fun. So overall, I think it's really exciting for college football. And we got here, Eric says Blake Dabo actually claimed he was going to start embracing the portal a couple months ago. Yeah, his first and only transfer was Hunter Johnson, who literally I think was like 5-star like 4 years ago, sucked, was literally going to retire and just be a grad assistant. And Dabo was like, no, come transfer here. Come play here. Guys, we have a super chat from our man Steven Smith. I don't know how he always gets, unless he somehow gets to personally pick these, he always gets yellow, which is fitting because I know he's an Iowa State fan. How would you guys control and regulate the transfer portal if you were in charge of light of NAL being a part of the football landscape? So we're the commissioners again, just like we were a couple months ago when we did all those shows.
This is a good question. I wish that I had a more complete answer. I think this is something where we can get a few people that were college football players that have transferred schools to come on and explain a little bit more about what their process was. Personally, I think that NIL factors into it quite a bit. That's one reason why I think so many guys have flipped and gone to USC. Sure, Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma, that explains some of the Oklahoma guys. But I think it is beyond the Lincoln Riley thing. I think guys want to be in LA in the era of these NIL deals and building their own brands. And like I've said before on different shows, USC and UCLA can dip into that market. They can dip into the Hollywood scene, which, to be completely honest, I feel like UCLA hasn't dipped into that at all and has not fallen back on the fact that they're 10 minutes from Hollywood. USC is 10 minutes from Hollywood in a different direction. And that's the whole thing, is the whole LA scene is now USC. So, and I think that actually has a lot to do with it. So with that being said, I think that maybe there could be certain regulations for games played, either how many or how few in the past, what your graduation status looks like. Maybe that could factor into it. What your current NIL deals look like, certain things like that. The only problem with all of those things is I'm not certain on how I think that should be regulated. I have ideas of what should factor into regulating the transfer portal and NIL deals. But those things that factor into it, I don't know how you actually regulate those things. So I apologize that for me personally, I don't think I have a perfect answer, but I have a few different ideas on how it could be done.
Yeah, I mean, it's an in-depth question, and it's probably one that takes a little more thought. I mean, see, I don't want to put any restrictions on it saying you can only transfer twice or you have to wait 2 years, just because, again, like, these are unpaid athletes trying to make the best decisions to better their futures. So I don't think putting any restrictions like that really helps anybody. But yeah, I mean, I feel bad, kind of like Josh, just because I feel like I don't have the most perfect answer right off the bat for this, and it takes some in-depth thought. But there are certainly ways you could do it, and I'm sure that, like I said, the NIL stuff will play a part, and like what Josh was talking about with guys trying to head out to LA, and there's opportunities in LA, or there's opportunities in Eugene at Nike. Yeah, it's an in-depth question. I honestly, the truth is, I think I'd have to take more time to think on it before I gave an in-depth answer.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think there is so much up in the air about it, and it's still, we're not a whole year, even a full year into this scenario where players are able to do this. So I think it's weird because there is still so many question marks about the NILs and about how and what and where and really everything about it. They just sort of got thrown to the wolves, the players, NCAA, everybody, with no real limits on what they can and cannot accept and whatever it is. But say they put a limit on what they can earn, then you're starting to cap players. But then your players are going to get under the table deals and they're going to get into more trouble. So I don't think there is right now a set in stone answer until we see at least another year or two of what the NIL will entail.
There's this question. I just want to talk about this real quickly before we talk about transfers. And I've been thinking about this. Will Clinton says, imagine Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart in the era of NILs. Who do you guys think? Thinking about the last 10 to 15 years, because I have a clear-cut, easy answer, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Who do you think, you can name 1 or 2 or 3 players, would have profited the most had NIL been around legally when they were playing? Because like I said, I have an easy one that I think, but I'm interested to see who you guys think comes to mind over the last 10, 15 years.
I've got one, but a few years later.
Tate Martell? No. I feel like Tim Tebow.
I was going to say Tebow too.
I think Leinart, he's a SoCal guy. He went to Mater Dei. I mean, he was like a cool Southern California guy, and his last year he took a dance class, and that was, as far as I know, all he was in. He was cool. He was Hollywood. So I think that definitely
Johnny,
early 2000s Miami legally. I think that would have been interesting.
Yeah, I'm shocked. None of you guys said who I said. Underscore did. Johnny Manziel was my pick. I think if he had it back then, again, he was definitely making probably a boatload under the radar. But
I mean, do you remember that commercial? I think it was a McDonald's commercial, and it was like an executive McDonald's club, and they were all in some big VIP room, and it said, let's welcome our newest member, LeBron James, who walks in seeing who's already been in the club and in the VIP room, and Johnny's in there. Like, of all people, I'm thinking to myself, they let Johnny Manziel into this thing before LeBron. Like, so yeah, I mean, you're probably right that he would have made a lot off NILs just because he was so popular.
Yeah, imagine some of these busts in the NFL where they probably were drafted a little later, didn't make much money. They would have been just reeling in the checks while in college. I'd be so pissed. All right, guys, though, I think it's time now to get to the fun part. Let's talk about transfers. We're going to be talking about the biggest transfers of the offseason. Again, there's a whole lot of transfers to get to, so if you guys have any players or teams you want to hear our thoughts on, or again, just any college football questions in general, kind of like the one we just had from Stephen Smith about just NIL deals in general, you guys can donate to the super chat. Ask us your questions. Again, we won't be able to get to every transfer during the show. We're going to try to get to as many as we can once we go past some of the big ones. But all right, guys, let's start. I think instead of starting with Caleb Williams, I think we should just start with USC because they have absolutely been killing it. According to 24/7 Sports, this is insane. Currently, they have Ole Miss number 1 in the transfer rankings with a score of 71.87, but USC is right behind them with a score of 71.85.
When was that updated?
Probably today. I would
have
say
my latest update on 24/7 as of 2:35 p.m. today, and they're actually flipped.
Here, let me refresh it and see if it changes. No, mine didn't change, but still, you can make the case either one. But SC's been killing it. Off the top of my head, Caleb Williams, Travis Dye, Mario Williams. What's Jerry Rice's son's name? Is it Brennan Rice?
Brendan Rice.
Yeah, Brennan
Rice. And they've had a couple others. So USC's been killing it. So we'll throw to our USC. Well, actually, we're all officially USC fans now today because we've completely abandoned Arizona State. Lyle, welcome aboard. nice to have you.
I don't know about all that.
Nice to have you. So we'll throw to Josh first again. Mainly so Caleb Williams, but lost in the Caleb Williams move to SC. Some of the players they picked up, I think Travis Dye especially, they have absolutely killed it in the transfer portal so far this offseason.
Well, look, so I have something up from The Athletic right now. They ranked the current players available, the best players currently available in the transfer portal. And then at the bottom, they have a list of all of the former players that were in the transfer portal and where they were ranked compared to other players at the time of their commitment. And just to recap a few of these, Mekhi Blackman from Colorado was number 19 in the transfer portal when he committed. Shane Lee from Bama was number 17. Who else? Brennan Rice was number 14. Scrolling up to the top 10. Mario Williams was number 4. Travis Dye was previously number 4. And Caleb Williams was number 1, obviously. So I think that just speaks to how good USC's been in the transfer portal. And that was just players that were ranked in the top 25 of transfer players available at the time. So I think USC's done a very good job in the transfer portal. For what it's worth, what Lincoln Riley said the other day, I completely agree with what he said. USC is not poaching players from Oklahoma. Dudes from Oklahoma want to leave OU and they choose USC. Like, it's a good point. But yeah, I mean, like I alluded to earlier, I think that Caleb Williams and everybody else that's going to USC is not only a reflection on Lincoln Riley as a head coach. I think it's USC as a brand, not just historically what they've been in the Pac-12, what they mean to college football, but actually what it stands for in this NIL era of guys that want to build their brand, that want to get to the NFL, that want to be under these good coaches and surrounded by good players, but also want to be in the spotlight the same way guys like Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart were back in the early 2000s. When LA didn't have 2 football teams in the NFL, they didn't have any. And USC was the pro team in Southern California. Nobody cares about the Chargers, no offense, but USC was Southern California's pro football team. And they were beating everybody all the time. They were winning Rose Bowls and national championships every year. And these dudes were celebrities, right? Now in the era of NIL deals, playing at a stadium that holds that many people, an iconic venue, you're going to be on national television every game with Lincoln Riley. Like, dudes want to be on the spotlight, and I think that a lot of that is going to factor into where USC is. And again, like, I've I've said this already. I think this speaks volumes for the Pac-12, and you either totally agree with this opinion or you totally disagree with it. And if I'm going to be blunt, it's not an opinion, it's pure fact. College football is better when USC is relevant. The Pac-12 is better when USC is relevant. Not Oregon. No disrespect to Oregon. It's great when Oregon's relevant too. The Pac-12 is at its best when USC is good, because that means USC as a brand is on national television. All these people, not just from the West Coast who want to stay playing in the Pac-12, but people from the East Coast and from the Midwest and from the South and wherever want to play on television, and they come to the Pac-12 schools, not just USC, but UCLA, Oregon, Arizona State, Stanford, wherever. Like, this is huge for the Pac-12, and it's huge for football on the West Coast. Whether you agree with it or not, that's a fact. And you look at the relevancy of the Pac-12 throughout history. The Pac-12 is relevant when USC is good. And it is even better when schools like Oregon are good, or Stanford's good, or Washington. And you look back at these years when USC was dominant in the early 2000s, and sure, they're running the table in the Pac-12 every year, but all these other teams are nationally relevant to an extent, where ASU has a good year or UCLA has a good year. And then obviously Oregon and Stanford rose to prominence. Like, it's good for the Pac-12. So that's what I have to say on SC.
100%. College football is better when more conferences are competitive. The Pac-12 is at its most competitive when USC is good. And the reason for that is USC has the best chance in the Pac-12 to play at a national level when they're recruiting at a national level. If you want to look at the Pac-12, I would say there's 3 teams that can compete at a national level and can recruit at a national level. And it's USC, it's Oregon, and I'd put those 2 on a different pedestal. And then if you pick the 3rd team, I would say it's Washington, but they're not on the same level as the first 2. Those are the only 3 teams in the Pac-12 that even recruited a somewhat national level. The other 9 teams, they just don't do it. Like, they might have some guys and have some decent years, but not at the level that those 3 schools can do it. And among those 3, USC does it at the best level when they're at their best. And this is the best that they've felt in terms of the direction they're heading in 10 or 15 years. And from my mind, from bringing in Lincoln Riley to Caleb Williams coming in to all the transfers they've all the transfers they've brought in. And yeah, like we talked about it on the last show. Maybe we shouldn't say they're going to make the playoff or anything like that in their first year, but going forward, I mean, they feel like they're about to return to prominence and to being a powerhouse team in college football and being expected to finish at the top of the Pac-12 every year. So, yeah, I mean, it's not fun when there's only 1 or 2 good conferences, and USC being good gives the Pac-12 a chance to get back into the national spotlight a little bit.
And if I can add on real quick, Blake, like, this is the same type of thing. It's not just a USC thing. It's the same thing in other conferences. Like, the Big Ten and collectively college football as a whole is better when Michigan and Ohio State are good. Look at Texas these last few years. The Big 12 to an extent has been fun because you don't know what to expect. But on the national level of things, where has the Big 12 actually competed outside of Oklahoma going to the playoff and not competing because they don't have a defense? Like, the Big 12 has been a joke the last couple of years because they can't compete on a national level. It's the same thing with the SEC. Now that Miami and Florida State are terrible, it's the same thing in the Big 12 when Texas is terrible and the only good team is Oklahoma, or in the ACC when the only good team is Clemson. Like, it's the same thing elsewhere as it is in the Pac-12. So just to add on to that point.
Yeah, and it's the same deal with how you look at Oregon, because for a while Oregon's been at the top of the Pac-12 the last few years, but they're similar to Oklahoma in a lot of ways, where they might have some preseason hype and have, an outside chance or even an inside chance to get into the playoff through half the year, 3/4 of the year. But every year it feels like they either fall on their face late in the season or they just don't have the talent to compete at a national level, and nobody else in the Pac-12's followed suit. So yeah, like, USC feels like the best chance to get the Pac-12 back into the spotlight.
Yeah, I mean, USC, like I said, they currently barely, depending on when you refresh the page, according to 24/7, have the best transfer class. I'm shocked that Alabama's so low. Again, I think it's based on just the more players you get, I think the higher you are. Because, like, for example, ASU is like at 15, which I don't know how or why. I like what Alabama's done a little more than SC this offseason. But like I mentioned, some of the additions SC made are damn good. I still don't understand why Travis Dye left Oregon. I guess they might have a crowded running back room. Before we move on from SC, I just want to hear you guys' thoughts on the whole Caleb Williams saga, because the second he put his name in the transfer portal, literally every person on planet Earth knew where he was going to end up. But the dude literally pushed this. I think it was officially like 6 weeks, maybe 5 weeks that he was in the portal. And there were like rumors that he was thinking about going back to Oklahoma. Wisconsin all of a sudden was like emerging as like a true contender, but he ended up at SC. So what are you guys' thoughts on the entire saga? Do you think that he was weighing his options and really struggling with his decision, or why do you guys think it took him 5 weeks? Do you think he couldn't get that Beats by Dre contract signed, and that's what was taking him so long to officially make the announcement?
Who knows? I mean, it's not a bad thought, but I don't know. At some point, it was like, oh my God, where's Caleb Williams going to sign? By the end of the week, I'm like, I'm just going to wait until it comes out at this point. Like, I thought he was going to SC. Somebody in my office was telling me Wisconsin. I was telling him he was dumb, but like, that's that. Like, I expected it to be USC. I was excited when the news actually came, but ultimately, like, he's probably just doing his thing. He's probably just chilling. Who knows? He could have just said, hey, I'm going to transfer. You know, I'm probably going to get an NIL deal. I'll probably go to USC, but want to still play with Lincoln Riley, the guy who recruited me. But do I need to do it ASAP and get out there and start practicing, or get out there and start taking classes, or can I chill for a bit?
Yeah, maybe he just liked to have the attention on him. Maybe he thought it was fun to kind of hold the power for a few weeks. I remember when we saw the news that he was entering the portal, I think I sent the tweet in our chat, and I think my text along with it was just, where is Jackson Dart transferring, when we saw he was transferring. And I mean, it ended up being true. It took a little longer than I think everybody thought it would, but still ended up where everybody knew he would, probably where he knew he would. And yeah, maybe he thought it was just fun to, you know, to have a couple fan bases waiting on their heels for a decision and hold the power. Other than that, yeah, I mean, maybe like Josh said, he was kind of just doing his thing and taking his time. I mean, that's possible. Obviously, we're sitting here talking about all the crazy scenarios or like the hot takes that could have came out of this, but maybe he just wanted to take his time and really weigh out all his options, even though, you know, it kind of seemed like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, I think there's a part of him that wanted to kind of just extend the suspense, just because we all were like, okay, it's a 99% chance, but what if this is actually true? Maybe he goes to Wisconsin. There was that part of me, I think I mentioned it on the show a couple weeks ago, where was Jackson Dart just sitting there going, crap, Caleb, do you want to go somewhere to USC preferably? So because if Caleb Williams, let's say, ended up at Wisconsin, I guess Ole Miss is a pretty good, you know, landing spot for a guy like Jackson Dart. But if Caleb Williams would have gone somewhere other than USC, Jackson Dart might have been going, SC, knocking at the door. Can I come back, please? I just wanted to test the waters. Josh, unfortunately, the Greg did donate to the super chat, so I do have to throw it on the screen. So he does say UCLA 62, $C 33.
Yeah, it's their 6th win against USC in 23 years. Impressive.
So he just wanted to let you know. So
was it not the Greg earlier in the chat saying fire Chip Kelly?
It might have been. I remember I was seeing a bunch of those earlier. See if I can find it. I don't know if I can.
That's quite the turnaround. I mean, hey, maybe they get a new coach and the new coach beats USC 62 to 33.
Chip Kelly led them to the promised land of beating USC one time. So
he did. And you know what? He was rewarded with a 4-year extension.
Yep. And they shot off fireworks and confetti in week 2. So.
All right, guys. So let's move on now to another one. Probably aside from Caleb Williams, we'll go back to Oklahoma, and that's Spencer Rattler. He entered the transfer portal, but when he entered the transfer portal, everyone was thinking, well, it's because Caleb Williams won the starting job. Had Spencer Rattler known that Caleb Williams would have also left, who knows if he's still at Oklahoma or not. Apparently, according to reports, Spencer Rattler had interest in coming back home to Arizona State. He's, you know, from the area. He would get to play in front of friends and family under a few NFL experienced coaches that remain, but Spencer Rattler is now with South Carolina. Now, I believe the connection was one of the former coaches from Oklahoma, or what's his name, the head coach of South Carolina. He was a coach for Rattler at Oklahoma. So that's why he ended up there. So Spencer Rattler goes to the SEC. And again, an interesting destination with South Carolina. But what are your thoughts on Spencer Rattler, who many projected as the Heisman frontrunner at the beginning of the season, the potential #1 pick, as Samu says, Shane Beamer? I was drawing a blank. I don't know why on that one. What are your thoughts on Spencer Rattler going to the Cox?
I thought the South Carolina move was, no disrespect to South Carolina, but it was surprising and a little bit underwhelming, to be completely honest with you. I'm interested to see what he does there. It could be a move that is surprisingly pleasant to follow. I definitely did not expect him to go to South Carolina. And I think at the same time, South Carolina is maybe a move where you're thinking that's kind of level with a lot of people thinking he'd go to ASU. But ultimately, if that's the move that he thought was going to be best for him and an opportunity where he can play in the SEC, play for a program that is steadily rising, at least in terms of potential, and gets a chance to play on likely national television against a bunch of teams like Bama and LSU and Auburn and Georgia and whoever else in that conference. Good for him. There have been things in the past where I thought that he's looked very inexperienced and he's made some plays that I do not think reflect his overall talent level. But also it's something that we've seen. He's had a lot of hype from a young age, and it's not my place to talk about whether or not that was good or bad for him. But maybe moving out of the spotlight from a place where Oklahoma, where he went in as a very high recruit, where he went into a program that was already in the spotlight, and things like that. I think maybe getting out of that and going to a place like South Carolina, again, no offense to the Cox, but like maybe going to a team that is going to be overshadowed in conference by a team that just won the national championship is good. Maybe it's a little humbling. Maybe this has been a humbling experience. Yeah. So maybe it'll be good for him in the long run.
I was going to say overshadowed by maybe 5, 6, 7 other teams in the conference. But yeah, good point.
Including his former team that'll join eventually.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought he might go to one of the blue blood schools too when he announced he was transferring. He didn't end up doing so. But when you look at it a little more, it makes some sense. One, he's going to play with a former coach. Two, he has Austin Stogner going with him. And Stogner was one of those guys. He was looking like a Mark Andrews type of tight end back in 2020. And then he got hurt, missed a bunch of time, and he lost a bunch of weight during his recovery process. And he wasn't all that great last year. But I remember like Rattler really liked throwing to that guy, and that's a big target. So to have a reliable security blanket like that and a coach he's already worked with makes a lot of sense for going to South Carolina, along with, he's obviously trying to get to the NFL, and he probably wants to play in the most coveted conference, get a bunch of TV games, get a bunch of national attention. And he thinks to himself, if I can beat some powerhouse teams, I bet you my stock rises a whole lot. Will he? That's to be seen. And like Josh said, he had some really great moments, and he had some moments where he looked like he needed a lot of work. So we'll see what his time at South Carolina looks like, but the move makes a lot of sense because the SEC is basically just an NFL pipeline.
Listen, since he was in high school, there's one thing we've known is that Spencer Rattler likes Cox. Just ask our friend Stephanie, right? Am I right?
Wait, what are you saying about Stephanie?
Josh and Lyle left. Okay, cool.
Oh,
they get it. Never mind. Anyways, I do have a question for Josh and Lyle. Nailed it.
Stephanie has a what?
Nothing.
Okay.
The one thing I do want to ask you guys, and you two brought this up a lot, is, there you go, is the national TV game. Does that really matter anymore?
I think so.
Malik Willis is going to be a top 15 pick in the draft. How many national TV games did he have this last year?
But it's also worth considering, do a lot of guys really care about, I hope this isn't confusing. Do guys care about getting scouted and drafted? Absolutely. But I think a lot of it is also about making money. And with these NIL deals, I think it's a good idea that they can make money if they're noticed too. And they're going to get noticed by playing on national television, because I think we're in an era where there is attention generated not just by getting scouted and then potentially being picked by an NFL team. Like Malik Willis. But at the same time, like, guys want to get noticed by fans too. So,
Yeah,
I do think that is important.
All right, that's
And also to play on television especially if you're going across the country. Like some of these guys in the transfer portal for USC have come to USC, not from Southern California. So at the same time, all right, you're going out to Southern California to play and your family's not there. They're not going to be at every game. And it's a lot easier for people to watch if you're playing on national television every week.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, we'll dive into this more when draft season gets closer. But Malik Willis, I mean, that guy, every single time he played any team that had a pulse on defense, he was really bad, like really bad. I forget who he played, but he threw 3 picks in a game this year against a Power 5 team. And it was not a good look. Yeah, Ole Miss. And that was the trend every time he played like a Power 5 team. So with Rattler making his decision with going to the SEC, again, I get it because the thought process is he's got all the talent in the world. So he says, if I go out and shred some of these SEC defenses, you have no reason to doubt me going to the NFL. So I think playing in the SEC still matters. Like, yeah, there's the Josh Allens of the world, but there's certainly a handful of guys who might have had some draft hype that did not succeed and were not on national TV.
Yeah,
I should say they came from small schools.
Yeah. The one thing I do want to say is, and actually touching on the Rattler scenario, is I think South Carolina is a good spot for him to go because I think when at Oklahoma, there was too much of a spotlight. Yes, like Lyle said, he's got all the raw talent. There was too much of a spotlight. Say Spencer Rattler were to be the one who would end up at USC, right? Way too much of a spotlight. I don't think it would have been a good pairing. I think South Carolina is the perfect spot. Look at another SEC school. You put him at Ole Miss. I think there is too big of a personality with him and Lane Kiffin that would have been together. Wouldn't have worked well. I think it is a good mix of personality. You're not the number one team in your conference. You're not the golden child right now. You're not whatever you want to call it. You're a guy who is a good quarterback, who is a high recruit, who has now made a transfer for hopefully the better for him. And I think, he can take a step back, focus on figuring out himself and refiguring out his game and hopefully succeed at a school that is not a slouch of a school at all. I think South Carolina is I'm not going to call them a blue blood, but they're a very reputable program. I think they're a great program.
They've been around.
I like it because, again, he's going to the SEC where you're not going to some of the top, teams in the conference where South Carolina is maybe the 6th, 7th best, most popular team in that conference. And you're still, I looked up their schedule for next season. They still got to play Georgia. They still got to play Texas A&M on the road at Arkansas, on the road at Florida, Tennessee. They improved Kentucky and Clemson to close the season. So South Carolina's got a lot of good opponents next year. And for Rattler, he wants to improve his draft stock. And the best place to do that is in the SEC, where if he's able to go out there, and again, he doesn't have to win the SEC at South Carolina. He doesn't have to have them go 10-2. But if they go 8-4, 9-3, I think they won 6 games this past season around that mark. But again, if they're an 8-9 win team, he puts up some really good numbers, maybe pulls off an upset or two. He, again, could be in the conversation next year for one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the class. I don't know if he's going to go above Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, but with what his stock is like now compared to next season, and again, he's playing for a coach that he has familiarity with, and I think it's going to work. So a lot less, stressful than if he would have gone to USC, Arizona State, Ole Miss, some other potential, spots. There's no pressure on him at South Carolina. If he sucks, well, they would have sucked anyway, and nothing really changes. So overall, I like the move for Spencer Rattler. Guys, the Greg
gone to Jackson State. That would have been awesome.
Yes,
that's too much of a personality, but it's okay.
The Greg says, "Keep it up, fellas. Fire Chip Kelly. Make UCLA great again." And he also throws in that they did beat USC 62-33. In case Josh forgot, when he brought it up 5 minutes ago.
They did win that
Mugla.
game.
Muga.
What? Never mind.
Hey, let's make UCLA great again. I'm down for UCLA.
That's my question. What does that mean? What is the bar exactly?
Yeah, at the Greg, let us know what your definition of great again is. Are you talking?
You don't have to super chat. It's always appreciated.
Yeah,
but you don't have to super chat. Would just be curious what the bar is.
Are you talking in contention for the Pac-12 title game? Or are we talking just going bowling for the second straight year?
I like what Samuel Wu just said, though. You can put that up on the screen. Basketball 67-64. I will say this. I did not watch the full game. I watched the second half because I was at the rowdy CBU Event Center that night to watch my California Baptist Lancers take on the UTRGV, Utah Rio UTRGV, Rio Grande Valley. Whack broadcaster Lyle Goldstein coming in hot right there. So watch out for the Lancers this weekend, Lyle.
Hey, Josh, we have our answer for UCLA to be great again. He's talking Vegas Bowl.
Oh,
so if UCLA can make the Vegas
we
Bowl,
will see you there, the Greg.
That's attainable. That's all right.
it can be done. Because
can
ASU sure will be competing for the Vegas Bowl in the coming years. To say that again. All right, guys. Here's what I wanted to move on. This is a really fun one, and that's Quinn Ewers going to Texas. We've talked about him briefly in previous shows about how he finessed the system at Ohio State. But Quinn Ewers, this guy's going to be the starting quarterback for Texas. They already have some pretty good talent there. What are you guys' thoughts on Quinn Ewers? Is Texas going to be back? What can we expect out of one of the biggest quarterback recruits of the past decade?
I think Lyle should go first because he talked about this a bit last week and made an awesome point about it.
Again, we debated at least a little bit. Will he be closer to Justin Fields or Tate Martell? And it's to be seen. I feel like we should say Fields because he was one of the highest quarterback recruits ever. And him along with Bijan Robinson should be a recipe for disaster for any defense they go against, especially in the Big 12. But, we're going to have to see this along with Sark's play calling too. Like, let's not forget, I know Sark didn't have a good year last year, but this is the reason he got that Texas job is because as the Alabama OC, he had a huge, huge piece of leading them to that national championship. I mean, you looked at that game, his play calling was off the charts. Same thing with the semifinals, really all season for that matter. It should be more of the same at Texas, and getting a guy like Ewers to pair with Bijan Robinson, Texas should be the best offense in the Big 12 next year. It's just, again, the Ewers basically has not played a snap, so we're going to have to see what he really has, and if it takes him some time to learn and adjust, and if he has a little bit of a growth period the way Rattler did, or if he just comes out guns blazing and looks like the best quarterback in the conference. So I'm excited to see it.
With that being said, I think that Sark needs to figure out a way to balance that offense out because you're absolutely right. They should be the best offense in the Big 12 next year, but we're also in an era of college football where I don't think this is I don't think this is the trend. I do think it is fairly common to see a lot of teams with great offenses that are great at passing the ball and not running the ball, or great at running the ball and not good at passing the ball. I think if they find a good balance, they will dominate every other defense in that conference. If they can find a balance between Quinn Ewers slinging it and Bijan Robinson running over defenders, which I think can happen, I think they're going to be almost unstoppable in the conference next year, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Because I do think that there are a lot of times you see really good teams that are not doing both. Hence, ASU 2 years ago where they refused to run the ball when they should have been, and this last year when they refused to throw the ball when they should have been.
Right.
Yeah, and Ewers is going to have help too. Like, he's going to have some receivers. Xavier Worthy was awesome as a freshman last year, and he's only going to get better. So, he's got what should be good play calling, maybe the best running back in college football, a strong receiving group. Like, Texas should be really good. Ewers is going to have a lot of pressure his first year, and we'll see how long it takes him to figure it all out. But sky's the limit for that offense.
Lyle, like you said last week, he got what he ended up wanting all along, is to be at Texas and a cool mill on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, I think I said it a couple weeks ago about how literally, because he couldn't make money in Texas yet based on the NIL deal. So we went to Ohio, classified early, made a mill, and did that. So overall, I think it's a very interesting fit. Like Lyle said, is he going to be the Tate Martell? Is he going to be Justin Fields? We'll have to wait and see. I mentioned his name earlier, but this is one happened recently. That's Jackson Dart going to Ole Miss. We saw what Lane Kiffin was able to do with Matt Corral. And a year ago, I don't think Matt Corral was on any big board at all for NFL drafts. Now he's quarterback 1, quarterback 2, depending on who you ask. Jackson Dart, again, I think was the top quarterback recruit, if not the second top quarterback recruit from his class. Showed flashes last year at SC, but now he goes to, a guy like Lane Kiffin who runs the most perfect offense you can ask for. And I think Jackson Dart is going to do, I'm not saying he's going to put up Matt Corral numbers this season, but for a guy who can grow, is only a sophomore with limited experience, this is an Ole Miss team that if they can figure things out with Dart as their quarterback, they're going to be a good team for the next couple of years.
I hope he starts. There was a question earlier that said, does Jackson Dart start? I sure as heck hope so, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I've said this when we've talked about him briefly, when we briefly talked about him going to Ole Miss, when we talked about USC's struggles in the regular season this last year. I did not think he was the guy this past year, but you could tell that he would be in the future, regardless of who was head coach, regardless of who else was on that team. Jackson Dart was going to be the USC quarterback of the future. Obviously, that didn't work out. Would have loved to have seen him stay, but he's got to do what's best. He transfers to Ole Miss, which if I could pick one school in college football where he fits perfectly, I think it's Ole Miss. So I'm excited to see what he can do there. I hope that he does well. He's obviously a player just like Keaton Slovis that I'm going to watch that's actually going to have some weapons around him at a different school that's not USC. Two guys that I've followed, and I'm looking forward to watching the two of them. So I hope he starts. My roommate watches Ole Miss, so I think I'll be watching a lot of Ole Miss next year.
Yeah,
I agree. I think you said it pretty well, and we talked about this a little bit last week too, that if somebody like Jordan Tamu can thrive in this offense, and Lane Kiffin, especially as of late, seems to be really good with quarterbacks, we think Jackson Dart is a more talented quarterback than somebody like Tamu, so he has every reason to succeed when he goes to Ole Miss.
It'll be exciting to see. Guys, we have a super chat. Sorry to cut you off, BK, from Autumn McComb.
I was just going to say, what about Bo Nix? But go ahead. We can skip him.
We'll get to that one. Don't you worry. Autumn McComb with the super chat, ignoring Quinn Ewers' thoughts on Ohio State transfers. So I had to look this up because I was thinking to myself, man, it seems like Ohio State has been very quiet this offseason. Based on the 24/7 rankings, they're like in the 60s, I think, in regards to the transfer portal.
69.
Oh, very nice. But they do have an interesting class because they did bring in Chip Trayanum, former ASU stud running back, who is going to be playing linebacker. So that's an interesting one. And there's one other notable transfer that I saw in here. Where did it go? Let me just find it real quickly. And that's cornerback Tanner McAllister, who was a pretty good corner at Oklahoma State. I think he was all conference, first or second team. So they're bringing in a good cornerback. But aside from that, that's essentially their class. They did lose Quinn Ewers. I think they lost Jack Miller as well. I don't think aside from that, they lost any other really, talented players. So Ohio State, Chip Trayanum at linebacker. How's that going to work out?
Listen, we saw the way he attacked holes as a running back. Imagine the opposite side of the ball where he has a second to wait, read, and react, and just run through and deck you. So I think it'll work well.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens in terms of tapping into the transfer portal. They obviously haven't really done that a whole lot. I just want to read a few of the teams that are directly ahead of them in the transfer rankings. It includes North Texas, Tulane, Arkansas State, San Jose State, the powerhouse that is Florida International, Akron, Marshall,
We are Marshall.
South Alabama, Colorado State. I mean, Jackson State is 42. So it's like 17 spots higher than Ohio State. But anyway, they've been very quiet in the transfer market, which is just fine. Like, teams don't have to do that. Like we said earlier, like, it is a new type of recruiting that is starting to take off. They don't have to do that, So granted, I don't know where they are in the rankings, but I guess they're probably higher than Clemson, Lyle. But they don't have to do that. But for what it's worth, I think the two transfers that they are bringing in will help. Definitely was surprised to see Trayanum go to Ohio State to play linebacker, but I think that's a huge loss for ASU, and I think he's going to fit perfectly at Ohio State.
Yeah, this transfer portal is all about what works best for you, because some schools are going crazy with trying to grab recruits out of the portal, some aren't. So what I was going to say was, yeah, Ohio State ranks pretty low right now in their transfer portal recruiting rankings, but what all those schools that you named don't have that Ohio State does is CJ Stroud, Travion Henderson, Jackson Smith, and Jegba, the number one wide receiver from the 2020 class in Emeka Ibuka, or in Julian Fleming, and the number one wide receiver in the 2021 class in Emeka Ibuka. So again, it's all about what works for it's all about what works for you.
Yeah.
And Ohio State might feel like they don't have to tap into the portal a ton because they're arguably, if not one of the best teams in college football in the recruiting game, and it's been off the charts over the last couple of years. Oh, I didn't even mention Marvin Harrison's kid. So, yeah,
It's Marvin Harrison Jr. How hard is
Yeah.
it to say that versus Marvin Harrison's kid?
All right, Junior. So, I'm not worried about Ohio State faltering this season because they didn't kill it in the transfer portal, at least yet. So it's all about what works for each different school. And for them, they probably feel like they're okay.
Josh, do you still have the transfer rankings pulled up?
I do. And actually, Blake, for what it's worth, I now see two different rankings. The first one has USC at 1 at like a 75.8 and Ole Miss at 2 with like a 75 point something, but at number 2. I just clicked on a different school's page and it brings up a side tab with all the rankings, and it has what you had with Ole Miss at 1 and USC at 2, separated by 2 decimal points.
Right.
So
what's Alabama? Where are they at?
9-ish, depending on the ranking.
They're 11. But the thing is, again, Alabama has 3 transfers, and they're ranked number 11.
I was going to say we should touch on them at some point before we move on.
Yeah, we will. But yeah, that's the thing about these rankings, where it takes into account also like the amount. Whereas SC, they're at number 1 with 13 transfers, whereas Alabama, they're at 11 with 3. And they're, just behind TCU, who's got 9, which is why Ohio State is so far down. Ohio State has 2 incoming transfers, the ones that we mentioned, whereas a few schools in front of them have like 7 or 8. So we can actually transition into that right now because we'll get to a certain player next. But Alabama, like we mentioned, only 3 that have come in. But the 3 that have come in are pretty damn good. So I believe I got this right. It's Jermaine Burton, Eli Ricks, and Jahmyr Gibbs, who Eli Ricks is probably one of the best cornerbacks in the country. Jahmyr Gibbs, probably one of the best running backs in the country, and Jermaine Burton, who was one of the top wide receiver recruits coming in at Georgia, opted to go, have Bryce Young throw him the ball instead of Stetson Bennett. So you cannot blame the lad for wanting to do that. So again, only 3 transfers. But I said this at the beginning of the show. SC's had, a better quantity, but Alabama's had the best quality with those 3, because if you're going to get only 3 transfers, those are 3 pretty good ones to get when you already have a team like Alabama.
Yeah, and if I can kick this one off, if you want to, it's hard to really break down any quote unquote weaknesses in Alabama's team. But if you really want to try and nitpick last year, some areas they could have improved, I'll look at 2 spots. One is the running back position, where Brian Robinson was fine. He was a senior who waited a long time to get his turn, but he wasn't anything near some of the guys that were ahead of him, like the Najee Harrises, et cetera, et cetera. They go get a guy in Jahmyr Gibbs, who he's interesting because he can run it really, really well. Like last year at Georgia Tech, he was averaging over 5 yards a carry. He did more of the same his first year. For a team that's not very good and is not going to have the same line that Alabama did. And he can also catch the ball out of the backfield. Like he went for 1,000 total yards last year on a Georgia Tech team that's not all that great. So you put him in that Alabama offense, I think that adds a new dynamic to their run pass attack, especially out of their backfield that they didn't have with Brian Robinson. And then their corner spot too. Like their corners, again, they were fine. They were good players. Everybody that goes to Alabama is good. They had Josh Jobe, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and Jalen Armour Davis for the most part manning their 2 corner spots. Eli Ricks, I mean, there's a real argument. He's the best corner in college football who battled some injuries last year. And all of a sudden, he's going to start manning the DB unit for that team. Oh, man. Like, Alabama has one bad game in the national title, and they go get those 2 guys. They're going to they're going to be scary. I mean, that's no breaking news, but those are some impact transfers that they got, even though the quantity was low.
Right. And again, you didn't even touch on Jermaine Burton, who was a 4-star that, again, we're probably going to, I'm not going to say he's going to replicate Jamison Williams numbers, but when all of a sudden now you go from Stetson Bennett to Bryce Young, I think Burton is going to be a guy that might have like 1,000 receiving yards next season, like 70, 80 catches. Because Alabama's wide receiver room this year is not as, I mean, it's still good, but it's not like as deep as it has been in years past. So he might be the wide receiver one there. So yeah, what Alabama's done with only 3 transfers has been unreal. But guys, do we want to talk about a certain transfer who's going to be playing on the West Coast?
Yeah.
I'll take that as a yes.
We can let Brady kick this one off. He's been waiting for this one.
Bo Nix.
He will
The
be
legend
everything
himself.
Oregon fans wanted Justin Herbert to be. Welcome to a real quarterback in Eugene. That's all I have to say.
So Bo Nix. Now there was a comment earlier. I want to see if I can find it so I can throw it up onto the screen here real quickly, because it was an interesting point that they brought up. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. And this comes from Trevor. So Ty Thompson, who is the biggest quarterback recruit in Oregon's history. I mean, this is a program that's had, again, Marcus Mariota, Justin Herbert, some really good names over the last few years. And this is the biggest name they've gotten. And what do they decide to do? They decide to bring in Bo Nix. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, well, Bo Nix has, 40 games of experience. Ty Thompson doesn't have any experience. Well, how is he supposed to get experience if Oregon doesn't give him a chance? Again, maybe Bo Nix is what we all think he could be in Oregon. But if I'm Oregon and you got this guy sitting in the wing and Ty Thompson, I'm shocked, one, he's still there. But, yeah, why bring in Bo Nix? If you're Bo Nix, why leave Auburn? Why go to Oregon? Great for our sake, because we get to see Bo Nix. Unfortunately, he doesn't play ASU next year. But what do you guys think about this questionable move?
Well, think about it this way. He's been a starter at Oregon for 3 years. Got hurt at the end of last season and still has 2 years of eligibility left. I think the plan, from what I can see and what I can take from this situation, is he's got 2 years of eligibility left. Maybe he'll only need 1, right? Use that 1 year, maybe have Thompson learn a little bit under him as a 3-year starter, regardless of what my personal opinions on Bo Nix are. He's a 3-year starter. He's played a lot of college football, and he's played a lot of college football against really good competition. So maybe bring him in. Maybe he thinks he's going to get drafted.
Didn't he beat Oregon too?
What'd you say?
Didn't he beat Oregon too?
He did.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he goes to Oregon. Maybe he only needs the 1 year under Lanning, and then it's the Thompson show after that. I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal, to be completely honest with you. I think we're also at a point where so many guys are coming into schools thinking, oh my God, he was such a big recruit, and if he's not the starting quarterback as a freshman, it's like this world-ending situation. Like, I don't think that's really the case. I think it's a problem if 2 top QB recruits come in at the exact same time. I think that's something where you're thinking, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's sticking around. But I don't see a problem for Thompson to come in and not be the starter right away.
I gotta ask. So you're suggesting if Bo uses just his 1 year of eligibility, that implies he's going to the draft after this year.
Well, I'm on the bandwagon, guys. First overall.
They'll use him as a Taysom Hill or something.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe he thinks he can thrive in an offense that gets the ball out quick, and he can throw a lot of tunnel screens and screen passes, and they'll emphasize the run a little bit, and maybe he thinks that's a place that he can utilize his strengths. But yeah,
overall the Under Armour merch.
Oh yeah,
He wanted
true.
Nike.
True. He got that Phil Knight deal. But yeah, I don't think this is going to elevate Oregon by any standards. I mean, my interest is, how's he going to compare to Anthony Brown? That's honestly not an answer I can give you this second.
He has to be better. Anthony Brown was so bad.
I thought he was going to be good too. I thought he was going to fit perfectly.
But let's see. I mean, so let's just put it out there. You're confidently willing to say that Bo Nix will be better than Anthony Brown.
Yes.
All right. I am not ready to say that yet. I am not ready to say that. But hey,
I'll tell you this right now. Is he going to look better? I don't know. Will his stats be better? I think they will be. But again, I also don't think stats tell the whole story. Are his yards and touchdowns going to be better? I say yes. Is his passer rating going to be there? Is his completion percentage going to be there? Are his turnovers going to be there? I don't know. I think he will have more yards and more touchdowns in a season than Anthony Brown had last year. I'll say that.
He'll be elite. He's going to look good.
Short round said it perfectly. Yep, there you go. Nix is veteran insurance, and that doesn't hurt to have at all.
Anthony Brown was
especially
so bad.
Especially with a team with a new coach. It's nice to have a little bit of a veteran presence there as well.
He was so bad.
All right.
You shut your poor mouth. He was amazing, Blake.
Yeah, no. Lyle, you're talking about the play with like 7 seconds left before the half.
The jump throw, yeah. When he was like falling out of bounds.
Yeah, and he just, oh boy. All right, so we are going to talk about one where we're going to go a little in depth on. And then after that, I'm just going to rattle off a bunch of other quarterbacks that are transferred. Because for the most part, again, we talked about Jahmyr Gibbs, Travis Dye. Not a whole lot of other positions. Maybe like Brandon Joseph, we can briefly give our thoughts on. But aside from that, quarterback is kind of where it's at in regards to the transfer portal. Those were kind of the bigger names. So we'll rattle off a bunch. We can give our quick 10, 15-second thoughts on, because there are still a lot of names that I'd like to mention before the show ends. But we've seen a lot of people that have talked about it based on the title. And hey, if you're here because of the title, then it worked. We got you in. We rattled you in. But let's talk about Jayden Daniels, guys, because this is a guy where last year we thought he might enter the NFL draft. He kind of hurt his stock. He opted to come back. He posted a pretty inspirational video on his social media back in December. And then today, out of the blue, he decides he's entering the transfer portal. Some of his teammates celebrated by saying that this guy, paraphrasing it, sucks, as they were cleared out his locker. So clearly not everyone on the team is heartbroken that he's leaving. So guys, just one thoughts on Jayden Daniels leaving midway through February, and where does he go? What does ASU do from here? Because this is a pretty big name that is leaving pretty late into the college football offseason. I mean, essentially, it's the brand new college football season is starting like in a month or so with practices and spring camp and spring games going on.
Honestly, I'm shocked. Like I'm actually shocked. I mean, he just came out and said, like, I ain't going anywhere. Guys got to do what's best for them, right? I will say I think that's shady. And honestly, I'm surprised because of that. But at the same time, offensive coordinator resigned because he was up to some shady stuff. Defensive coordinator left because he took a new job, a.k.a. running because he did shady stuff. And all the other resignations that are going on in the ASU football program. I'll admit right now, whenever you see something from our Twitter account about ASU that in all caps says blow it all up, that's me. Blow it all up. It's all over the place. It is bad. It should be blown all up. Start over. Fold the program. Start again next year.
Tank for the number one pick.
It's that bad. I think ASU needs a restart as bad as Blake needs his license. Like that bad. But anyway, I think Jayden leaving is just kind of the icing on the cake. And we have and Herm Edwards is still the head coach. People in the athletic department are still there. Like, we don't need to name all the names, but like Herm, personally, in my opinion, should not be the head coach anymore. Great guy, like him, shouldn't be the head coach anymore. But I think this is the icing on the cake of everything that's gone on the last year with this program. We still almost don't know anything, right? We just know that shady things have been going on. These guys are leaving. These guys are resigning, whatever. And now Jayden's leaving like 2 or 3 weeks after he said that he was committed, he was staying, whatever. And then everything else that boils over today, guys apparently cleaning out his locker, taking videos saying he's not good. And all of that comes after Ray Anderson, the athletic director, said, we are done being mediocre. We're a top 15 program. We want to compete for Rose Bowls. We want to compete for national championships. And you fired Todd Graham because he was mediocre, and you have been beyond mediocre ever since. You've brought in all of these big-time transfers. You've brought in all of these really good recruiting classes. You've brought in this insanely good coaching staff, supposedly. And in the long run, you now get a spotlight on the program. And when you're mediocre, that's worse than where you were with Todd Graham, which was mediocrity. Now you have a spotlight and you're still mediocre. So that's where I think you are. And you have all this promise of, you have these good running backs. You bring in all these receivers who, none of which have panned out, by the way. Not one. How many 4- and 5-star receivers can you bring in until you realize none of them can catch the ball?
Well, Rashad White was really good, but he was a transfer. So.
Receivers.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said running backs and receivers. My bad.
Sorry. Receivers. You bring in all these 4-star receivers. None of them catch the ball. Like, I don't understand. Like, none of the receivers.
He's got a bunch of big game Tommies out there.
You got a bunch of big game Tommy Hudsons, and big game Tommy was the guy that you wanted to catch passes. And big game Tommy came through when he needed to in big games. Hence, big game Tommy. And all these things.
And with Jared Buback, right?
Jared Buback.
Yeah, didn't Tommy Hudson drop a game-winning pass against USC?
Other than that one game, Kyle, other than that one game, big game Tommy delivered. And you knew what you were getting from big game Tommy Hudson, okay? But look, you have all of this potential. Like, you're moving up in the world. Zach Hill's coming in to run your offense. Jayden Daniels is coming back. And you are terrible. You're worse than you were before. You're in a terrible position. All these sanctions are looming. And then after all of this, when Jayden Daniels literally looked like he could be a potential first-round pick, when he could be a Heisman candidate, the dude got worse every year. And the offense got worse every year. And somehow, a complete 180 from where we were freshman year, it was the defense that ASU was relying on to win games. Could you have imagined somebody telling you that? Our freshman year at Arizona State, like 6 or 7 years, however long ago that was, I would have told you needed to be somewhere and get some help and someone tell you that you were not watching the right football games. You were watching Minnesota or Iowa State or USC. You were not watching Arizona State football, okay? It has gone downhill. And this is the icing on the cake today was Jayden Daniels.
I will say it a little differently, and I'll be very quick with it. As you say it's the icing on the cake, I'll say it's the writing on the wall. More shit is about to hit the fan. Literally. Yeah, Blake, you got a fan right above you, and you threw it at the screen. There you go.
No, I threw it at our fans.
Oh, at our fans.
Very nice.
That's just mean.
Hitting you with shit.
I will say
I think so much. Sorry, I'll be quick. I think so much more will come out in the next, I don't know if it's weeks or months or even days, but as Kevin Hart says in a stand-up special, it's about to go down. Just be behind me when I walk into class. It's about to go down.
In this case, I don't know.
My mama told me to tell you. What'd you say, Josh?
I said, I don't know if I want to be behind him if it's about to go down.
I look at it like this when I saw the news today. I was surprised, but not as surprised as I should have been. Because, again, like Brady said, there was so much writing on the wall. You've got all these coaches leaving. You've got players transferring. Everything seems like it's going downhill. Herm Edwards seems like he's, days or weeks from not having a job anymore. I mean, Herm Edwards being gone seems inevitable at this point. And for Jayden Daniels, if he's trying to make a decision for his future and he's trying to get to the NFL and still raise his draft stock and improve his college career, he probably doesn't see that happening at ASU at this point. I mean, Josh just went on a whole tangent about it. Receivers aren't catching passes. His 2 stud running backs are gone. Basically, the entire coaching staff is gone, and there's probably more sanctions coming. So I'm not surprised to see him leaving. I was a little surprised to see how his teammates reacted. But what really kind of irks me is if they thought there was any chance of Jayden transferring, why didn't they do something in the portal months ago? Because there was rumors that Spencer Rattler wanted to come here. He's from Arizona. We thought there was a chance he would come back to Tempe. and they didn't do anything about it. Now, maybe there was miscommunication, but if they thought there was any chance that Jayden was going to leave, I don't know why they didn't act on this sooner, because they're kind of out of options now at quarterback.
This is the same thing a few years ago where ASU recruited no quarterbacks. And then one year recorded all the quarterbacks. And they all came in at the same time. Only one of them got the job. One of them is no longer a quarterback. One of them transferred. One of them is Jayden Daniels, who is now transferring. And that quarterback class, none of them are at ASU anymore. And then after that, you know what they didn't do? Recruit a quarterback.
You look at
because they put all their eggs in one basket, right?
You look at years prior to when the quarterback room was Brady White, Manny Wilkins, Blake Barnett, Bryce Super Bowl champion Bryce Perkins.
That's true.
Yeah, I'll just
Kareem Orr also played Super Bowl champion LA Rams this year.
That's almost as great as Ben Skoranek getting like 6 targets in the Super Bowl.
Why did they keep throwing him the ball?
Hey, I need him to do well, Lau. I pulled a Ben Skoranek signed Notre Dame card. That's like a 1 out of 3. So I need him to do well. So that card
really
1,000 someday. I need it. I'll just say mine real quickly. I got no problem with Jayden transferring because Josh pretty much hit it on the nail. Between everyone leaving, between the coaches being gone, between the program likely getting the death penalty for some reason, why bother staying? But the thing I hate is, it kind of, the timing screws ASU. I'm not saying that they would have, I think they probably would have gotten Spencer Rattler, for being honest, because he wanted to come back home probably. ASU gets a great quarterback. But there were a lot of other really good quarterbacks in the transfer portal at one point this offseason that ASU definitely could have landed. Sure, they have Bear Bryant's great grandson coming in, who might be solid. I think he was a 4-star recruit, but there were a lot of really good options that ASU could have gotten. Jayden Daniels, again, he committed in December whenever he posted that video. So he does kind of screw ASU a bit. But then again, with how everything's going, I can kind of understand why. But the timing sucks because ASU, they at least could have benefited. We kind of already answered this because this came in about 5 minutes ago from Stephen Smith. What's really going on at ASU? Are they going to get the death penalty? I don't know if they're going to get the death penalty like we've seen some other schools get. But as you've seen between the coaches leaving, between players wanting out, it's a mess there, and Lyle pretty much hit it spot on in our group chat earlier, so I'll share it right now. I think the over-under he gave the next 3 years on wins for ASU was set at 12.5. So before we move on, guys, over-under 12.5 wins the next 3 seasons. Does ASU hit the over or the under?
I'll take the over, but barely.
I think
I go over.
Yeah, I think I see 10.5. Which
in that case, I still go over.
Yeah, over, but not by much. I mean, they're not going to get the death penalty. They didn't do what they're being basically penalized for is they recruited during a COVID dead period when you weren't supposed to, and maybe other stuff will come out too. So I don't think that's going to warrant the death penalty, but the implications and the consequences that it's going to serve have kind of already been self-inflicted because they're not going to get recruits and people are leaving and players, coaches, et cetera, et cetera. So they're kind of going to be in a bad spot for a couple of years, I think. So I'm going to go a slight over on wins.
I'm going over, and also back to the Rams Super Bowl. Hey, big shout out to our guy Jake.
Jake
winning on and off the field.
Jake
I think he's winning more off the field.
He's winning more off the field.
Yeah, he's winning more off the field. So, all right, guys. So we got probably 5 minutes or so left of the show, maybe a little more if we go over. I'm going to rattle off a bunch of quarterback transfers. Brady's like, no, I haven't eaten food.
10 o'clock.
Food today. I'm going to rattle off some
and I'm tired.
transfers, and you guys can just give me your quick, immediate thoughts on that move. Dylan Gabriel going from UCF to UCLA for about a couple weeks, and then going to Oklahoma.
Let's play a game called Love It or Hate It.
Love it.
Yeah, love it. Same. He'll get a chance to throw for a bunch of yards.
Brady, do you love it?
I said love it.
All right. I love it too. I think he's going to do well. I'm still bummed he wasn't at UCLA because the quarterbacks would be pretty damn good in the Pac-12. Yes, Brady?
Is JT Daniels still in the transfer portal? Is he signed anywhere?
He's still hanging out there.
He is, and I saw on some Devil's Digest sites today, people asking about, what are the chances he comes to ASU?
Please.
There's no way.
That's the interesting thing is JT Daniels is still sitting there. Jayden Daniels, that's a tongue twister. JT Daniels, Jayden Daniels. What programs are left that need a quarterback at this point? Like everyone's either already transferred somewhere or everyone already has a quarterback. Like where, like Jayden Daniels, like where can he go? Where can JT Daniels go? Indiana.
I've got someone convinced that he's going to Wisconsin.
Wait, Brady, where did Michael Penix Jr. transfer? Because I know he ended up somewhere.
So I was gonna say he went to Washington, and I would not be sold if I was a Husky fan on him being the starter.
No.
So if I was one of the Daniels, I would think about there.
Oh God.
Indiana or Washington?
Washington.
Neither. Those are hellholes. All right, guys.
You're a hellhole.
That's true. Here's an interesting one. Speaking of Pac-12, Cameron Ward, who comes from Incarnate Ward, who won the FCS Player of the Year as a true freshman. The numbers he put up were insane. We just saw Bailey Zappi go from the FCS to the FBS level. Now, he's not going to put up Bailey Zappi numbers, but he goes to Washington State. Could be an under-the-radar kind of move.
I was going to bring that up as my underrated transfer. And I've already, and the reason why is because I've already mentioned Jayden Delora in the past going from Wazoo to U of A. I think that's an interesting move, and I think Jayden Delora's got some talent, and I think he'll definitely help U of A, and I think U of A is going to win. We're setting the bar pretty high this year for U of A, guys. I'm setting the bar to 6 wins.
Ooh.
I think they can get to 6 wins this year. But in terms of Ward, I think that's a huge move. Like, I think that this could be a pretty decent year for quarterbacks in the Pac-12. Even better if Dylan Gabriel was at UCLA, obviously. But obviously, big year outside of ASU. But other than that, I think that this actually could be a decent year for quarterbacks in the Pac-12. I think there are some underrated guys in the conference that'll do well this year.
Yeah, I mean, it worked for Luke Falk. It worked for Gardner Minshew. It worked for Anthony Gordon. I think there's a chance he could be very similar to those guys, and we'll see how Jake Dickert does as a first-year head coach, or I guess he got a few games at the end of last year. But yeah, I mean, this feels like the type of move that could work out really well for the Cougars.
Yeah, here's one I'm shocked we didn't get to earlier, but there's just been so many really good quarterbacks, and that's Keaton Slovis, the also forgotten quarterback at SC that ended up transferring because he thought he was going to lose the job to Jackson Dart, who thought he was going to lose the job to Caleb Williams. So it's just a big trickle effect. He goes to Pitt, where I believe Pittsburgh's returning their entire offensive line, and I believe all of their offensive weapons as well, including the Biletnikoff Award winner in Jordan Addison. So Keaton Slovis, a guy who we've seen be a really good quarterback, goes to Pitt. Oh, God, just picture up Sycamore. But Keaton Slovis goes to Pitt, I think, again, is one of the more underrated transfers of the offseason.
Yeah, I love it. Good for him. I hope he balls out.
It's a pipeline, right? It's a pipeline.
It's a pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Pac-12 pipeline. Max Brown, Joey Yellen, Keaton Slovis. Pipeline.
Well, it's not even a Pac-12 pipeline. Never mind. I guess Yellen was at ASU. I was just going to say it was a USC pipeline. But yeah, Pac-12 South pipeline. Yeah, I mean, he's going to have Addison to throw to, and Pitt was sneaky good last year. I mean, I think that is a good fit. I think they can compete in the ACC for sure.
Love it.
Do you think we're going to be seeing some of these schools playing 4D chess years in advance, knowing that they're gonna keep their eye on certain players, and if they want to recruit the player's girlfriend to come to said school for a sport, knowing if that player ends up in the transfer portal, that player might come there. You got to be ahead of the game in this. So
I don't see that happening. I don't see a football coach being like, listen,
all I'm saying is
I'm going to need you to recruit this girl who only played JV for 3 years because we need her boyfriend in like 4 years.
Hey, if Archie Manning's girlfriend is currently playing soccer or softball and I'm a program, I'm offering her a full ride.
Hey,
Arch is down to there was rumors he was down to 2, but it's up to 6.
So
yeah, shout out to the guys that are just like releasing my top 13.
My top 132.
Woo! I've currently narrowed mine down to top 129.
Really? Who'd you rule out?
I saw one about a week ago that was 100% legitimate. It was like my top 35, and I'm thinking
I've seen those, and I laughed out
loud. I
loud.
love them too. I love them every time.
They all look the same too. All the little graphics every single one of them looks the same.
They're
It's
like
'cause
that
it's
terrible fire. It's one
It's because
dude.
it's one guy that does them. It's like Hawes something. I forget
Tilton,
what his name
whatever.
is.
Yeah.
I'm seeing transfers are doing this now. Like transfers are like my top 5, and I'm like, you're a transfer. What is this? My top 5. Also, I'm learning this now because I'm on the 24/7 page. So apparently, Indiana's new quarterback is former Missouri quarterback Connor Bazelak. Is that how you say the name?
Maybe.
So,
Ball. No, yeah.
Bazelak. Bazalik. I'm not exactly sure.
Bazalik.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely an interesting one right there. A couple other ones, guys. Zach Calzada, the quarterback who took down Bama at Texas A&M, he's at Auburn now to replace Bo Nix. So, did they upgrade, downgrade at the quarterback position?
Maybe.
Not exactly sure there. So,
Interesting
who
move.
knows? Who knows right there? Max Johnson, he goes from LSU, and he's now the quarterback at Texas A&M. So, upgrade, downgrade?
Sure.
I don't really know there. Here's an
A lot
interesting
of them
one,
are very
guys.
lateral.
Here's
I
a pretty
agree.
interesting one that I like. An interesting one. Once Quinn Ewers came, Casey Thompson to Nebraska.
That's
So,
interesting. I like it.
What is it? What's his name? I'm drawing the blank. The guy that was there for Adrian Martinez. He went to Kansas State, so he's still playing college football.
How?
Ninth
Kansas
season.
State.
How is he still in college?
And
Wait.
guys, do you want to know why he went to Kansas State?
Why?
Because he
His
got
girlfriend
part of
goes
the.
there.
played
No,
there.
his girlfriend's like on the soccer team.
Yeah,
I was going
I'm
to say
telling you
because he
guys.
got unlimited use to the jet, the golf course, the
Well, guys,
retired
also
coaches package.
Keaton Slovis's girlfriend, I'm pretty sure, is on the Pitt soccer team.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that's
Again,
what
so-
Blake was getting at, I think.
yeah.
Mhm. So
Hold
we got
on, let's
Casey
pull up.
Thompson.
Wait, Adrian
Go ahead, Sam.
Martinez has only played since 2018. That's it.
Hang on. What about Christian Zendejas transferring, guys?
Oh, good.
All right, back to what you were saying.
So I mean, it's Casey Thompson. He looked pretty good last year in spurts for Texas. I think he led the Big 12 in passing yards and passing touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. So he goes to Nebraska. Nebraska, the greatest 3-win team ever. So maybe Casey Thompson's the right guy. Maybe he's the guy that can lead him to the promised land. A couple more interesting one, guys. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Grant Wells, he goes from Marshall to Virginia Tech. He had some magic a couple years ago, but the
It's a big
question is,
move.
does he bring it back?
Never forget when he dropped 70 on Bo Nix on the road in NCAA 14 at Blake's apartment.
That is true. That is
Good.
true. And apparently Chuba Purdy also transferred to
Chubba.
Nebraska. Or Chubba.
Yep.
So they got two. They got two quarterbacks coming in.
His
So
real first name is Preston, I think.
Whatever happened to Tyler Shuck?
he's still got
Texas
eligibility
Tech.
somewhere.
I think he's still at Texas Tech.
Oh no, I think he said Michigan.
No, he transferred.
Yeah,
Didn't
it's
he
a Michigan,
transfer
I
to
think.
Oregon?
No,
No,
he
Tyler
transferred
Shuck?
from Oregon to
From
Texas
Oregon, I
Tech.
know. He's
I
still
thought
at
he
Texas
transferred.
Tech.
Oh no, it was Bowman that transferred from Texas Tech to Michigan,
Yeah.
who then didn't see a single snap last
What
year.
about the McCaffreys? Are they still around?
Maybe.
one of them
Dylan?
is I think he's still
Dylan,
in
I think it's
Northern
Dylan.
Colorado. I think he was in Northern Colorado, something like that.
Yeah.
Guys, any other notable transfers you briefly want to mention before we wrap this up? I did mention Brandon Joseph earlier in the show, which screw you, Lyle.
God, that's such a good transfer too. I think
I-
that's sick.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, he didn't have a great year last year is the only thing, and hopefully, he goes back to his 2019 form or his 2020 form this coming year. But yeah, in 2020, I mean, him and Kyle Hamilton were the two best safeties in college football. Now he's going to replace Hamilton. So yeah, I'm excited about it. Hopefully it's a seamless transfer, and hopefully he's really good. I'm excited about it for sure.
Yeah, this was a guy where a couple years ago he was like, this guy's going to be a first round pick in a couple years. As a freshman, he was one of, the best defensive players in pretty much all of college football. So, I mean, that was a really good pickup for Notre Dame. Guys, any other note? I'm looking right here at some notable ones. Nothing that we pretty much
There
haven't
were
already
two
hit on.
players who were at one time ranked within the top 6 of available players in the transfer portal, according to The Athletic. Both of them named Jackson. both of them spelling Jackson with an X. Jackson Dart, who went from USC to Ole Miss, and defensive tackle Jackson Player, who went from Tulsa to Baylor. Now, Jackson, rumor has it, was a creative player, and they only did the first name and then accidentally pressed the start button, and it saved everything. So his last name's just Player.
There you go.
Wouldn't it be
So-
last name?
But two Jacksons without a K.
Hey, I like this one, Eric P. Of course, we forgot about Shane McDonough, Towson's punter who transferred to NC State.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That was a good one. So a lot of transfers this offseason. Still some to go because there's still players in the portal because apparently you can still hop into the portal if you want. So a whole lot of transfers there. But guys, I think that wraps up tonight's show. Went a little overboard. That's okay, Brady. Sorry we're keeping you up. You can
I get to sleep in a bit tomorrow, so it's okay because I got to work late.
Oh, there you go, guys. Any
100 days of the Indy 500, baby. Let's go.
Hey, the Snake Pit looks good this year. Maybe I could finally see Martin Garrix.
Hey, dude.
Thanks a lot, Aiden.
Snake Pit,
Can I-
Yellow Claw, Dead Mouse, Steve Aoki, Galantis, Martin Garrix. Best we've ever had. Come on out to the Snake Pit. 18 plus, no coolers. Buy a ticket.
All right.
Before we go, I would like to read a few of my favorite names of players who were in the transfer portal at some point, if that's okay.
Go
Of
for
course,
Just Quinemius St. Splooge.
No. So, of course, Jackson Dart's got to be up there because that's a cool one. But some of my favorites include Osiris Torrance, but Osiris spelled like Cyrus, but like O apostrophe, like Irish. I think that's a good one. Jaleel Billingsley is fun. Tremont Shorts. I like that one. There's also, of course,
It sounds
Shane-
like a Jamaican guy trying to get you to trade a pair of shorts.
Tremont Shorts. Yeah, that's a good one. Latavius Briney. I think that's a good one. There was another really good one at the very end. Oh, Mac Hollensteiner. If you think he's an offensive lineman, you'd be correct. And then there was one really good one towards obviously.
He's got to be from Upper New York, right, Lyle?
Obvious.
Oh yeah.
Chubba Purdy's obviously a good one, but I think rounding out my list is West Weeks. West Weeks.
All right, there you
He's
go.
going to LSU.
What, didn't the coldest to ever do it put his transfer?
No, he's still a
Or did he
recruit.
just commit?
He hasn't even. Yeah, I think he committed to LSU if I
He's
remember correctly.
at LSU, yeah. The coldest.
I heard that like about recently when he I was like, I thought this guy committed a couple years ago and he just didn't do anything at the collegiate level. No, he's just been a recruit the last like 6 years. It's just
Wait a
his
minute.
name is fantastic.
So I see that he committed to LSU, but now he's on Nebraska's roster.
Oh, that's right. Nebraska. He flipped to Nebraska.
Yep, the coldest to ever do it, Crawford. What a guy.
God, that guy is going to be such a bust, and it's going to suck because his name's so
cares?
good. I
Yeah.
know.
He's
You can't be the
he's gonna
coldest
be
to
one of
ever
those-
do it and finish the season with 19 catches for 110 yards.
Look at his photo and tell me that this man is not the coldest to ever do it.
He looks like Lamar Jackson.
No,
He
it's
does look like Lamar
it's
Jackson.
To ever, not to ever. It's to ever.
To
I
ever,
was saying
the coldest.
I'm not saying he looks like his name would be the coldest to ever do it. I'm saying he looks like he is the coldest to ever do it.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
he's going to be the coldest to ever do it in
He looks
Nebraska.
awesome.
Well, that does wrap up this week's edition of the Harris Highlights Show. That was a fun one. Lots of transfer talks. Again, make sure to follow us on Twitter at the HH Show _. That way you can know when our next show is, what the topic's going to be. I don't know what the next topic's going to be, so we'll tease it at that. We'll see what our next show is. But, hey, guys, any parting words before we head out for the week?
IndyCar season kicks off next Sunday
Oh,
for the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, presented by RP Funding on
cannot wait.
NBC. So everybody watch, and also watch the Ontario Reign and the team to be named later, according to Blake, for Lyle.
Hey, I haven't seen it in a post, so I don't know if it's official yet, if I can share that news. So, hey, I'm just doing the respectable thing here, man.
In sharing the news.
Rams house.
Sharing news, but not the news. I'm just sharing news.
Rams house.
No, Rain House, Josh.
And
Rain
the
house.
Rain house as well.
Rain in
but mostly-
77.
Mostly Rams house. Mostly Blake. I've been telling you all season. Just hop in the car, drive on down to a game. I'll get you tickets. On
Bro,
me.
give me
Can
the
we get our
schedule.
show sponsored by Bergeson's, please? That'd be great.
Bergesons.
Let me just tell you guys a quick free ad for Bergeson's heating, electrical, and AC repair. These guys do everything. They do everything. You need something taken care of, you call Bergie and the boys, okay?
But Josh,
call
what about
Bergie.
the Mexican restaurant down there in Pasadena?
Oh, Mijares?
Yes.
With that famous, that really old YouTube skit of Will Ferrell with that little girl, and he's wearing a Mijares Mexican restaurant shirt. Iconic.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
man.
this show's sponsored by the D Las Vegas.
The D Las Vegas would be a big time sponsor. We'd be going to Vegas a lot.
Hey, they're
more than we
connected to
are.
Circus, so I'd be down. I would
Are.
definitely be down.
Hey, have you seen the pool at the D? It's incredible.
Is it shaped like a D?
Dude, it is legit the size of a bathtub and it's in a parking lot.
Is
So
it
it's not
shaped
a
like
big
a
D.
D?
No.
Not a big D?
That's a missed opportunity.
right.
The
We'll
hot
wrap
tub should
up
be
with-
shaped like D's.
We'll wrap up this show with a big D.
D
So
what?
for Josh Schaefer, Lyle Goldstein, Brady Clayton, this has been Blake Harris from the Chateau in beautiful Monrovia, California. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Twitter. Rams, March Madness. I have
And
the same
Lyle.
2009 Super Bowl shirt. Lyle, let's
No,
see what's
Blake.
gracing your shirt before.
Mariners. I'm guessing
Sorry,
Mariners.
Brady.
I'm
Please
guessing
be
Mariners.
Blaze Brady.
Let's
No,
Please
see
be
it.
Blaze
of
Brady.
course, of course, it's a Mariners shirt.
Let's
Of
see it.
course.
Yeah.
There it is. There it is. Yeah, Brady, sorry. Still too soon. Hey, it's okay. Thanks, you guys, for watching. We'll see you in a future episode. And the Greg says the D Las Vegas is legit. It's a legit D.